A really massive legal and financial shift just went down, and it all comes back to a single Supreme Court decision that has, well, effectively torn down a multi-billion-dollar tariff wall. We're going to unpack what this means because, honestly, the bottom line implications for U.S. businesses are absolutely staggering.
Yeah, you're seeing that right. Around $150 billion. That's the estimated value of the tariff refunds that are now on the table thanks to this ruling. Now look, this isn't just some minor policy tweak. This is potentially one of the largest corporate cash infusions from the U.S. Treasury that we have ever seen. It's a huge deal.
All right, Section 1, the verdict. So how on earth did a law from 1977 end up sparking a $150 billion legal showdown? Let's get right into the verdict that kicked this whole thing off.
Okay, so the case itself was Learning Resources, Inc. v. Trump. And the headline here is pretty simple. In a decisive 6-3 vote, the court said the president went too far. That legal tool he was using to build this tariff wall, a law called IEEPA, well, the court decided it just wasn't the right tool for the job. You can't use it to impose broad taxes on imports. Simple as that.
So what is this IEEPA law? Well, it goes back to 1977, and it gives the president some pretty powerful economic tools. But, and this is the key part, they're only supposed to be used when there's a declared national emergency, coming from an unusual and extraordinary threat. The administration had argued that things like trade deficits or drug trafficking fit that bill, but the court, they just didn't buy it. They said, no, this authority doesn't give you a blank check to start imposing taxes on your own.
So that covers the legal side of things. Now for what you're really here for, the $150 billion question, the immediate corporate impact. Let's talk about the money.
A number like $150 billion can feel pretty abstract, but listen to this quote from the co-founder of a company called Busy Baby. She's talking about a single shipment, and she says it was the difference between paying an extra $48,000 in tariffs or not. Think about that. For thousands of business owners, this wasn't some high-level economic debate. It was a day-to-day, gut-wrenching operational crisis.
So who felt the most pain here? Well, the impact definitely wasn't spread out evenly. You can see the sectors that got hit the hardest were retail and automotive. No surprise there, since they lean so heavily on global supply chains, but also home furnishings and a ton of other consumer goods. These are the industries that are now right in the middle of this whole financial shift, looking at huge potential refunds and trying to figure out their next strategic move.
And let's just zoom in on the auto industry for a second, because this is wild. These tariffs, they weren't just some line item on a corporate spreadsheet. No way. They got passed directly onto you, the consumer. A car put together in Canada, its sticker price jumped by almost $4,000. A car from Japan or Germany, about $3,000 more. This is a perfect example of a real, tangible cost that got baked into the supply chain and was paid for, ultimately, by people on the dealership lot.
Okay, so we've seen the impact, but now let's dig into the why. For any investor or business strategist out there, really understanding the court's legal reasoning is absolutely critical if you want to have any chance of predicting what's going to happen next.
This quote from the Supreme Court's majority opinion really just says it all. The whole argument boils down to one thing: the separation of powers. See, the Constitution is very clear. It gives Congress and only Congress the power to tax. So if Congress wants to hand that power over to the president, they have to do it with crystal clear language and put some very specific limits on it. And what the court found was that with IEEPA, Congress did neither of those things, not even close.
So here was the core legal fight. On one side, you had the administration's claim. They were saying, hey, the law gives us the power to regulate importation, and that's a broad, flexible tool that should include tariffs. But on the other side, the Supreme Court basically drew a line in the sand. They said the power to tax belongs to Congress, period. The word regulate is not and never has been a clear green light to start taxing people. They're two completely different things.
And the court pulled out a really important legal idea here, something called the Major Questions Doctrine. It sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. It basically says that if a government agency is going to make a decision with vast economic and political significance, and, a $150 billion tariff program definitely qualifies, it can't just find some vague phrase in an old law to justify it. Congress has to give a clear, specific, unambiguous authorization, a direct green light. So, you might be thinking, great, this is the end of tariffs. Well, not so fast. This ruling was a major setback for the administration's strategy, for sure, but it's not the end of the story. Let's look at the fallback plan.
First off, and this is absolutely critical to understand, this ruling does not touch everything. The big Section 301 tariffs on goods from China, still in place. The Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum, still there. Why? Because those were put in place using completely different laws, and this court case had nothing to do with them.
So what's left in the toolbox? The administration still has options, but they are a whole different ballgame compared to IEEPA. You've got Section 232, which is based on national security. You've got Section 301 for unfair trade practices. But look at the process. They require investigations, public comments, a lot more hoops to jump through. They're more targeted and have way more limitations. The big takeaway for businesses is this. The era of getting hit with massive, sweeping tariffs with just the stroke of a pen, that's probably over. Future actions are going to be slower, more procedural, and frankly a lot more predictable.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Market outlook and strategy. What does all this mean for your business strategy and the market moving forward?
Everyone loves the word refund, right? Well, hold on. The reality of the situation is what a lot of people are already calling the refund a mess. Getting that $150 billion back into the hands of companies is not going to be simple, and it's definitely not going to be quick. We're talking about a massive logistical nightmare for both the government and the corporations.
So, what's the path to actually getting a refund? Well, think of it less like a sprint and more like a bureaucratic marathon. First, step 1, everyone is just sitting around waiting for formal guidance from U.S. Customs. Then step 2, the claims have to go through the U.S. Court of International Trade, which is a specialized court that, let's just say, isn't known for its speed. The bottom line from analysts is a warning: expect major delays and almost certainly more legal fights over the nitty-gritty details. This is not about just filling out a form and getting a check. And all of this leaves the market with a ton of big unanswered questions. I mean, think about it. How quickly are we actually going to get that official guidance? Is this refund process going to be streamlined, or is it going to be a legal swamp? And a big one for everyone. Will companies actually pass these savings on to consumers, or will it just pad their bottom line? And what does this do to existing trade deals? These are the questions that are being debated in every single C-suite right now.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. The Supreme Court has essentially just reset the rules of the game on trade authority. The legal ground has fundamentally shifted beneath our feet. And the question now for every business leader, for every investor, is a simple one. Is your supply chain strategy actually built to handle this new legal landscape?
As always, this has been an Iron Financial Analysis. Just a reminder, this is for educational purposes only, and it does not constitute financial advice. Any and all investment decisions should always be made with the help of a qualified professional.
Quick disclaimer, everything I share is for entertainment and informational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, so please do your own research or talk to a professional before making any moves with your money.